I wanted to record something to talk about a revelation that I've had about game design and about the way that I relate to games and why it's difficult specifically to make smaller games for me. A lot of the games that I enjoy, and therefore the types of games that I think I would like to make, are games that are heavily driven by kind of like big picture goals or larger story arcs or world building elements or some progression that like the micro moments play into this larger arc of your experience. I think I have a tendency to think in those larger arcs because those are the things that excite me, right? Like the thing that excites me isn't clicking on a troop and sending them to do something. The thing that excites me is the strategical macro scale thing that's being represented in that. Maybe there's 100 of those troops advancing and they're all capturing some point for you. And the strategic implications of that, resources you'll have access to, geopolitical relationships between you and the other players on the map, those are the things that interest me. But that's difficult for an amateur indie developer, because if you start from that and work your way backwards, you're essentially trying to find retroactively the game mechanics that will be fun to support your macro idea. And I think that's going about it backwards. There's a devlog done by Yahtzee for The Escapist where he talks about going to teach at like a high school or something, or like a middle school, and talking to these kids about game dev and game design and asking them what kind of games they'd like to make. By his account, a lot of the pitches that they made were, kind of grand ideas, secondary or tertiary loops, essentially. Things like, oh, you're like an explorer and you're exploring, or like you're like conquering other kingdoms. But then when pressed about the core gameplay loop of these game ideas, a lot of them kind of responded with blank expressions. And I think that this is the sage wisdom within the make small games thing. It's that by forcing yourself to make small games, which often don't have the luxury of these kind of bigger, grander ideas being expressed through them, you're forced into a confrontation with the necessity of the core gameplay loop. Because if your game is just jumping around in a room and you have to make that fun, it's forcing you to learn game design. It's forcing you to build tools for your game that then you build levels out of, right?